Hey, it's Alex Radcliffe from BoardGameCo, and it's time for another week in review, and the most important thing, which you know already if you watched yesterday's video, is going to be that the couch is back. The couch is back in the shots because enough people wanted it, and I also want it. I like the feel, the keeping to, I guess, the original BoardGameCo where I started. I mean, technically I started against the backdrop of my shelves. It took a while before I migrated to the couch over here, but it's been a staple for a while, so the couch will ultimately stay. I bought another set of lights, nothing too crazy. I was able to jigger everything so that the mic I can just swing around, two of the lights I can just reposition. I just need to grab one color light so I'm not constantly rearranging that, but ultimately I can get my two setups switched with my camera and everything in roughly 5 to 6 minutes, which is not the worst and not worth buying new equipment to replace all of that. So I'll take the compromise. The couch will be back, if nothing else, for more of the topical or the week in review videos. But anything that requires a shot of the game is going to be using my new table with the overhead system, with all of that. And speaking of which, I got a comment which I agree with and is right, talking about how the mat on the table looks suspiciously like Quackalope's fabric on his table. And you're not wrong. In fact, I would argue Quackalope's fabric is basically taking over a lot of content creators. I've seen it, and to be clear, I don't know if it's on all of their channels. I know some of them it is, some of them I think it just looks like it. But if you look at Quackalope's channel, my channel, Game Brigade, Before You Play, Table Knots, there are a lot of people apparently now using basically just this wool blanket that Jesse from Quackalope started using and has been recommending. And I was a late convert myself, but it does a good job. It has a good feel. It doesn't. There are some mats I think have a better feel, but it's a good combination of texture, feel, coloring, all those things. And overall, I'm pretty happy with that wool blanket situation. But honestly, it's Quackalope's biggest contributions apparently are ducks and quacking on every video, and now the fabric that's going to be on a whole bunch of content creators' channels or whatnot. So that's going to be all setup stuff before we even really dive into anything else. And so as far as news go, so there's a few pieces of news, and then it's a little bit of drama, some news. First of all, regarding Bloodstone, which we already talked about, but that was yesterday's video. We'll talk about that when we go through the week in review. But before we get into that, just a few things. So first of all, Stellaris Infinite Legacy has a game coming, and when I say has a game coming, what I really mean to say is I missed talking about that last week and totally forgot to talk about it. And it's on Kickstarter right now with over $1 million raised day one, which is amazing. Clearly, they have a fan base. Both Academy Games as well as Stellaris probably have a fan base together, and over $1 million day one. And we'll talk about it more next week in a Should You Back It video. Past that, Asmodee, the big acquirer and eater, devourer of worlds or whatnot, had acquired Plan B Games. Plan B Games is going to be famous for the Century series, for the Azul series, for a bunch of games. I'm pretty sure the Century series. I'm pretty sure I got this right. And also Great Western Trail, the series coming up from there. So they have the trio of Great Western Trail reprints, and so Asmodee acquired them. And this is going to be one of those things that falls in the category of, oh no, Asmodee is acquiring everything, but also the practical impact to all of our lives has been minimal. I'll grant, the whole parts replacement thing that Asmodee put into for everyone who has, games under their umbrella, that is frustrating, and that has likely been the most noticeable impact we've all seen. But ultimately, I would say the actual impact has been minimal versus the fear and frustration around Asmodee acquiring everything has been fairly large. And we'll see how that plays out. Maybe worse things will happen. But ultimately, Asmodee acquired Plan B Games, which is the news there. Pandasaurus continued to drop more and more game announcements. Basically, Pandasaurus seems to be dropping like a game announcement like every 2 months, or possibly even less. They have Via Umbra, which I believe their release for that was pushed off a bit, something to do with delays in shipping and the containers arriving. And they just announced that they have Wild Space and Loop, which are two combo-driven games. Now, one's a cooperative game, one's not, but two combo-driven systems. I'm paying attention, if for no other reason, that I like powers and abilities and combos. Combos would fall into the powers and abilities genre, I believe, I think, probably, maybe, right? And so overall, I'm intrigued just because anything that's selling itself as a combo-driven game is something that has me interested and paying attention. And then lastly, as far as announcements, we have War Chest Siege was announced. So War Chest Siege is going to be the second expansion to War Chest. War Chest is a solid game, but it falls in the category for me of, there are a whole bunch of games coming up in this list, by the way, but there are a bunch of games out there, a lot of games, that are in my shelves, in my collection, that I like, that I think they're solid games. But then practically speaking, I play a game like Everdell, I play a game like Pseudo Fantasy Brawl, I play Spirit Island, Terraforming Mars, I play all these other games, and it makes me look at these second-tier games that, for me, second-tier, not necessarily for you, but second-tier games for me, and I'm like, why am I keeping good games when I could just be playing more of the great games? And I have more great games coming. I mean, Wild Ascent, if you watch my review, again, we'll talk about that in the week of review, but if you watch my Wild Ascent review, that's a 5 out of 5 for me. It's another solid game, along with Primal, Wild Ascent. I mean, there are so many incredible experiences, both solo, cooperative, competitive, that I have in my collection, that I shouldn't be giving time, energy, and attention, and shelf space. Really, it's really time and attention as opposed to shelf space, to games that are merely good. And again, every game will have a person that is, every person will have a game that is great for them, a game that is good for them, a game that was ever. War Chess is an amazing game. It really is. But I don't pull it off the shelf. I don't feel the drive to pull it off the shelf. And there are so many, there's gonna be more and more purges. I already have in my corner over there, prepping for my, what I got rid of in March purge. I already have a stack of games starting up, because I'm gonna be getting more and more cutthroat with the games I am willing to keep, because there are so many good games. There are so many good games. And with that, let's talk about the Everdell Drama. So Everdell, I'm going to talk about this more in Monday's video when I go through the Kickstarter, so I'm not heavily going to dive into it. But short version is Everdell has a Kickstarter. Kickstarter is doing well, probably crossing 2 million by the time you watch this. And it is, I mean, there's a little bit of drama around the price, which I talked about in my Everdell Should You Back It video. And I don't think I was fair. And I still believe everything I said, to be clear, but I don't think I was 100% fair with the degree. Okay, let me say this again. Whenever I take a stance, I like to take both sides. I like to argue both sides and to come at it from both people's opinions. Now, the part where I was not fair is, while I did say that I understand the frustration, I understand where it comes from, I don't think I was fair in the sense that I didn't fully argue the side of people who are frustrated by the price. I argued my side, my stance, which I do believe, and it is my side and my stance, but I didn't fully argue the alternative side. I tried to take my position without arguing the alternative position, and I like to think that, in general, I like to argue the alternative position. As far as arguing the alternative position, I believe the short version of everything, and for those who don't know, just quick condensed notes, Everdell had a very cheap price point if you want to get absolutely everything, and an okay price point if you want to get the new stuff. Effectively meaning that people who are new to the Everdell series, who hadn't spent a single dollar on Everdell, were getting a better price, a better entry point, than people who were loyal backers of Everdell for 2-3 Kickstarters, whatever it is. And so effectively new people are being rewarded over existing customers, which leaves a sour taste in people's mouths. Now, the part where I fought back and still believe is, I think the stance that was taken was very selfish in the way it was presented. Not necessarily in the actual motives, and the presentation was very almost like, well, they shouldn't get a discount. And now obviously that's not the case. No one's actually saying they shouldn't get a discount. The new backers shouldn't get a cheaper price. Rather, the original backers want their own discount. They want their own incentive, reward, or something for being backers. Now, a point that I made, and again, I do believe in this point, is if Starling Games had simply said, oh, it's $250 for the all-in, and called it a day and walked away, I don't think any of this drama would exist. Meaning, I don't think the frustration does come from the price of the game, rather it comes from the relative price and the feeling that new people are being prioritized over themselves. So I think it is a comparative driven source of drama as opposed to a purely price sensitive point of drama, which I think is, I hope I'm presenting myself clearly there. But again, I do understand and acknowledge that if you're saying, hey, you know what, I just want that price split. The problem we have here, and this is the part where it gets into practical issues, the problem we have is you can't simply, the Starling Games is not simply going to say, okay, we raise the price of the all-in and we'll lower your price. That's not what's happening. At this point, practically speaking, you're just asking Starling Games to give an additional refund or additional credit to people who are getting the new content only, and that's also ignoring the fact that when you buy the single box, you are saving on a whole bunch of other things. You're saving on shipping, you're saving on production, you're saving on packing and pulling boxes, you're saving on the literal production costs of the boxes, of the inserts of 4 different games. There is a cost savings that is being passed on. That is not a question of someone being punished, it's a question of Starling Games choosing not to profit more when they could choose to profit more. I think I'm rambling a bit. I didn't fully frame my argument here as much as I should have. My overall point is, I do believe everything I said, but I also didn't do a better job at arguing the alternative viewpoint. And I think I understand where the alternative viewpoint comes from. I disagree with the end result of how things were presented, but I think there is room for a conversation where they could have pushed for some form of discount that wasn't crazy out there. You know, if people had gotten together and politely said, politely is a key thing, and you start going crazy in the comments, no one really cares to listen. But if they had politely expressed themselves as, hey, you know, I'm previous backer here, really disappointed, it would be great if you can give some sort of, like, you know, $10 credit in the Pledge Manager or $10 shipping credit to previous backers. Like, there's a way you could have asked something that's minimal that might have gotten you an actual change, as opposed to just complaining. Even, yeah. I'm starting to ramble again. That would be Everdell. So, that brings us to what I played this past week. Sometimes I should draft my thoughts a little more. It's a good week for playing games. It's a solid week for playing games. Oh my gosh. Okay, so, pulling up, we have Thursday. Thursday, I played Evacuate, which you already saw. I think I actually have another one over here. See, this is what, because I log my plays out of order, sometimes things are missing. I played Quests and Cannons, which is going to be a prototype. It's coming to Kickstarter at some point, I think in June or July. But overall, solid game. We'll get into more when I actually cover it. I will be covering it. But solid game, pay attention to Quests and Cannons. We have Evacuate, which I played for, I did it for a channel. This was a game where someone commented that Rena looked less interested. And she wasn't less interested, but it is a good point that she was more distracted, because this was the first time we had a playthrough on the channel that, I mean, we don't have a lot of playthroughs to begin with, but this is the first time that we had a playthrough on the channel that we were playing it for the first time on camera. And so that means she was more distracted while she tried to pay attention to the game and be on top of the game. Overall, Evacuate is solid. It's not one that I feel the need to add to my collection based on one play. I may give it more plays before it eventually goes away. We'll see how that goes. But it was a solid little, I mean, we covered the thoughts in the actual playthrough, so you can watch that. I think the premise is interesting. I had nitpicks about how it is actually handled that I wanted more control and or more powers and abilities. But overall, interesting game. Peterson Games has a Kickstarter on, not a Kickstarter, a crowdfunding platform on GameFound right now. The Monsters Collection, 4 different games. We just played Evacuate. I played Oros. You want to pay attention to this. Pay attention to Oros. It was a really solid experience, incredibly beautiful, attractive, well done, well designed. Check out Oros. It is a game that I will be covering for the channel, and solid game. Pay attention to that one. Then I played Mia London, which we had a review. We'll come to that. I played Blood Rage. I got a game of Blood Rage in, which was the worst game of Blood Rage I have ever played. Genuinely, the worst game of Blood Rage I have ever played. Still a blast. Still an absolute blast. But it was like such a runaway leader problem. The combination of gods we had and the way someone drafted their set, it was by far the worst game I've ever had, and still a ton of fun. I got a ton of plays of Spicy in. Spicy is going to be a bluffing game in which you basically lie about one facet of the card. You either lie about the flavor, which is the color effectively, or the suit, or sorry, the color or the number is what you're lying about. The premise didn't work initially, but the more we played it, the more it did work. It's one of those things you have to play it a few times and start to develop and click, and we start to realize the intricacies of the numbering, the timing, all these different facets, when and where to bluff. Overall, I still prefer Cockroach Poker, which is our go-to bluffing game, but Spicy was a solid game that I'm happy to be adding to the collection. Skulls of Sedlec. Skulls of Sedlec is excellent. Oh my gosh. So Skulls of Sedlec is going to be the third Button Shy game that I'm adding to my collection, along with Sprawlopolis and Circle the Wagons. Skulls of Sedlec is 2-player. They have a solo mode, but it might be you might need the extras to do the solo mode. I have to double check. But overall, it plays 2 to 3 players and is so ridiculously good. It may well end up being my favorite Button Shy game. So if you haven't grabbed Skulls of Sedlec, pay attention to it. It is really, really good. I'd get it for the 2-player, not the solo mode. We played a few games of Winter Kingdom. Winter Kingdom is the new version of Kingdom Builder. I will be doing a play this, not that of the 2 of them, likely. I'll either be doing a review of Winter Kingdom or play this, not that. I will see, and we'll get a few more plays in and figure things out. But overall, solid game. The question from there is, you know, how I feel after whatever. We'll get to it. Play this, not that. Cockroach Poker. Got some more Cockroach Poker in. Wild Assent. I've gotten a few more games of Wild Assent in. I'm now up to my 7th game. I think when I filmed my review, I did 4 games, and I'm currently finishing up my 7th game. I got 1 creature left to kill. Absolute blast. And then, of course, we played Lost Ruins of Arnak, and I'm realizing I don't have this logged, but we played Nidavellir. I have nothing logged since Sunday. Wow, I have nothing logged since Sunday here. I gotta log my week. But I've played Nidavellir. I played something else online. I have a bunch of stuff. I really need to be up to date on this logging situation here. But that would be overall what my week in review is as far as playing games. As far as week in review. So week in review is going to start with Saturday. Saturday we had a playthrough and review of Orconomics. Orconomics is great. This is one of those tricky ones because on the one hand, I am excited for it. I'm adding to my collection, back to the Kickstarter. I'm excited about all the modules, the extras they have, if it mixes up the play experience. On the other hand, it firmly falls into that category of a good game that I almost shouldn't be having because I have too many amazing games. So we'll see how it shakes out long term. It's going to be comparing it primarily against Valyria Card Kingdoms, but I really did like it. I don't think it's a keeper long term, but I think it's the kind of game I will have in my collection for a few years. We'll see once it actually comes. With prototypes, I tend not to actually play them for the most part. Once I'm done with them, I usually wait till I get the Kickstarter, then play that. I just don't like playing prototypes. I'd rather play the full developed experience, but that's Orconomics. From there we have So You've Been Eaten. So You've Been Eaten is, that's on Kickstarter right now, doing phenomenally well. It's Looted Creations, I believe, their highest funded game at the moment, and it's doing very well. Overall, lots of people like it. For myself, I thought it was okay. I think it's going to stay in my collection initially for one of the solo modes. There are 3 ways to play the game, 4 if you count the 0 versus 0, and I did not like playing as the monster either solo or 2-player. So for me, the only way I like playing that game is going to be the miner versus the beast. So effectively, the solo miner versus the beast. And I did enjoy that experience, happy to dive back into it. I'm curious how it stays long term, going back to that whole keeping the best games only. I don't think it's going to stay long term, but we'll see. I know the expansion the Kickstarter has some more content, so we'll see how that plays out with that. We have the Night Market. The Night Market is one that, again, it's interesting. There are a lot of great games, and there are a lot of good games, and it's hard to pinpoint that aspect of which ones are going to stay in my collection. And as usual, the typical disclaimer that a game that's good just means it's good. Now, across the board, who is it great for is a different conversation. There are games that will be good for me, great for you. There are games that will be great for me, good for you, or bad for you. So I like the feedback, I like the general concept of knowing a game has legs, and then from there I usually dive in and see where it is for myself. But the Night Market is a solid game that I am adding that one to my collection as well, currently on Kickstarter by Talon Strike Studios, and that one is fun. I really like the tic-tac-toe puzzle of the game. Some aspects of the game were a little fiddlier than I would like, which is why it's good, not great category, but I'm intrigued by the final copy, whether it'll be streamlined, smoothed out, or whatever it is, but even as is, it's a game that I enjoyed and I'm happy to get back to the table. Evacuate, why am I saying that? Evacuate, because we talked about Evacuate, I just gave you my thoughts on that already when talking about games I played. And then Mia London, which again, did not record. I need to record these things. Mia London, I played with Rikki, and we did I reviewed it with Rikki and played it technically, and that's a great one. It's a great solid little memory game, more of an experience than a game, similar to The Mind. It's kind of like a fun little experience you all go through together. You can all win, you can all lose, some of you can win. I don't think we've ever had multiple people winning, though. I don't think in all the games we've had, I don't think we've ever had multiple people actually win the game. In theory, everyone can win. It's really just a separate experience you're just going through together. But overall, that one's a solid one. Really happy to add that one to collection. And Rikki, I think Rikki put it in her top 10 games. Did she? I think she put it in her top 10 games of all time. From there, going to Sunday. Sunday, I did a Zombicide recap video covering everything that's going on with Zombicide, and then, of course, as predicted, they dropped all the new stuff the next day. I complained about the lack of new specific Zombicide or Western-themed sculpts, and, of course, over the next 2 days, they dropped all the cool Western-themed sculpts. They dropped the all-in. They only actually had one all-in. I thought they'd have 2. I thought they'd have a gameplay and then an everything all-in. They just went straight with the gameplay all-in, which I backed. I'm getting the gameplay all-in plus the horses pack. I'm not getting anything else, but I don't think we're getting anything else. We'll have to double check, but I'm pretty sure I'm getting the gameplay all in plus the miniatures for the horses if you want those separately. Moving on to Monday. I'm going to take a drink now, 1 second. Moving on to Monday. Monday was to back or not to back. A few games I'm backing, but nothing really new that dropped that I'm backing. Theurgy is one I'm considering backing, but lots of games coming. This next Monday, I'm going to have another tons of games that dropped this past week. The Monday after that, I don't know if I will have a to back or not to back. There's a suspiciously dead week just smack dab in the middle there. Tuesday is going to be Rikki's top 10 favorite games of all time, and that one was actually the second time we filmed that video. We had done a video before, like 2 months ago, and it got lost. I don't know where it got lost. Like, I loaded it. I'm pretty sure I loaded it to YouTube, but it's not in YouTube, and it wasn't in my folder of videos. So somewhere along the way it got lost, and Rikki was okay at that because she got to refilm it with more games picked out. So different games picked out, not more games picked out. Wednesday was going to be Everdell, should you back it or not, and that was basically the whole drama thingy. Overall, Everdell is a solid it's a solid back no matter what pledge level you're interested. It's a good price. But if you really want the best price, the great price, then go for that all-in collection for $200, plus VAT, plus shipping, whatever it is. But that is going to be a solid enough price that even if you have Everdell content, it may still be the best way to get it, and then sell off your extras from there. Thursday was going to be my review of Wild Assent. Wild Assent is one that, so first of all, a few things. One is, like I said already, Wild Assent's a 5 out of 5 for me. And loving this game. It gives me similar vibes to playing Primal. Different experiences, very different in the actual gameplay. But it's one of the few games I'm really happy to have set up on my table and just go through it. I'm finishing up the 7th scenario right now. That's roughly 10 to 14 hours of content. I don't know exactly how much, but each scenario is going to be, once you count the actual gameplay plus the encampment, each scenario is in the 90 minutes to 120 minutes range. So I'm about 7 to 10 hours of content in, or sorry, 10 to 14 hours of content into the game already, and I love it. It's excellent. I'm going to dive back into Campaign 2 sooner than I thought because it's so much fun. But one thing I want to mention, which I forgot about I forgot two things in the review. First of all, I forgot to give it a score. I forgot to actually score it, which is fine. I didn't used to score things, so it's not a big deal. But this is a 5 out of 5 for me. It's absolutely enjoying it. And then separately, I also forgot to note a complaint, which is worth mentioning because I don't want my reviews to be, meaning a review's supposed to be giving you all the context, and I feel bad that I did miss something that is a definite strike against the game, which is the game has a campaign mode and no easy way to track what happened where you left off. So for me, the reason I forgot to mention it is because it's been set up on my table the entire time. I mean, I've been moving it around, I have a little surface on, but it's been set up the entire time. I haven't put it away since starting it. But if you do choose to put it away in between your 10 games, which is reasonable, right? There's no easy way to track things. It's pen and paper and not notching down of being like, well, this character had this much health, this character with the encampment had 2 gold, we have these cards. You have to really actually track a decent amount of stuff on pen and paper. And I know that Lazy Squire is releasing like pads to do that, so it's not like you have to just write it out yourself. There'll be a campaign tracker pad situation. But I wish it had been better, different in the way it was done. Ultimately, again, doesn't stop my enjoyment of the game, but it is certainly a strike worth mentioning. Thursday, that was Thursday, never mind. Friday was going to be Cancelled, Kickstarters, and Bloodstone. Again, these videos I typically film Thursday night or Friday morning, which means I generally have no context to how my Friday videos actually did, how well they were received, whether there's anything interesting to talk about. So I hope you enjoyed that video, and I hope it didn't stir the pot in a negative way. I mean, it's meant to be... It's not a condemnation of anything. I've talked about Cancelled Kickstarters before. This is a new twist or approach or view of it. Overall, I think Bloodstone. I think that Skybound Games, Druid City Games, I think they made the right move by canceling it. I expect them to cancel it much earlier, and I go into that heavily in that video. Which brings us to Saturday. Another busy Saturday. Nothing, this is the norm to a certain extent, which will, in fact, speaking of which, what I might be doing, I might actually be shifting or splitting Saturday into 2 different sets of videos, because I think 6 videos in one day is just pushing it. So I may be starting to split it up, and I don't know if or when this is happening exactly, because the balance is that I kind of am having a hard enough time fitting my daily videos in as it is, so it's hard to give up another day. But I may end up splitting it up so that we have, let's say, Saturday and Tuesday are review and playthrough day, and then the rest of the week it fills it out. So we'll see. Still experimenting, still thinking it through, but for right now, Saturday is still review day. That could change at any point, by the way. But Saturday is going to be Lost Ruins of Arnak playthrough with my wife. Really enjoyed this one. I had a lot of fun. We're going back and forth. We're quipping a lot. I really enjoyed the playthrough, and of course, I enjoyed Lost Ruins of Arnak as well. And that, by the way, is a Patreon requested video. So Patrons voted on which game I was going to play with Rena, and Lost Ruins of Arnak won that one. From there, we have Court of Miracles coming up. So Lost Ruins of Arnak will be 12 Eastern Standard Time. Court of Miracles will be coming up at 2 Eastern Standard Time. That's a review of Lucky Ducks games. You can check that out. Then at 4 Eastern Standard Time, I probably have something coming up with Rikki. We haven't actually filmed it yet. We're probably filming it in a few minutes, so hopefully that will happen. And then finally, at 6 Eastern Standard Time, I have a Nidavellir playthrough and review. It's going to be myself, Rena, and Shira. We are playing that game and then giving our review after. Of course, timestamps down below. Well, timestamps down below of that video in case you want to check that out. And finally, this video is running long as usual. Finally, we have next week, we have a Should You Back It for Stellaris. Probably. I have to go through it, but I assume I'll have a Should You Back It for Stellaris. And then I have What I Backed January, which was actually supposed to be last week, but like I said already, I'm having trouble fitting all the videos in, and I ended up pushing it back a week, although it's actually What I Backed February, not What I Backed January. And that is a wrap. That's a long video, everything going on there. Until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from BoardGameCo. I hope you enjoyed this video. Have a good weekend, and I'll talk to you, and have a good one. And you see, now I'm rambling. Let's do it again. I'm Alex Radcliffe from BoardGameCo, and have a good one.